Recording in progress.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today is the third Sunday after Epiphany. And by this point, we've gotten over Jesus' baptism. And Jesus is now doing something different. He is putting all the pieces in place that would launch his public ministry. So the backstory is that John the Baptist has been arrested. He was preaching around the Jordan River. And then he got arrested, and Jesus sees John get arrested and begins to plan something else. And he moves from the river to the Sea of Galilee. And he doesn't go home. You know, his home is by the sea. Nazareth is by the Sea of Galilee. He goes across the way to Capernaum. And there he begins to call some disciples. Here we begin to see a very organized, structural thing happening. You know, we talk about Pentecost being the birth time of the church, but here you begin to see the nascent seeds of the church being put together. Jesus is getting organized. And I wonder, when Jesus gathered his people, if he thought, after, I'll make you fishers of men, if he said to them, I thought we should come up with some bylaws. Like, some officers. Maybe we should elect some officers and put together a board of directors. Like, I'll be the executive director because I'm Jesus. And then maybe, who's a good writer? Who likes to take minutes? Maybe Andrew, I don't know. Though, we need a treasurer. Hey, Judas, why don't you keep the common purse? Those were the nascent days of the church. And today we already have bylaws, and you're going to be asked to vote on them, a change in the bylaws soon. And you know that we have officers. You know that I am the president of the corporation, and that means I'm the executive director. It's not all it's cracked up to be. And we have great officers. This year our clerk was Ann Kapishki, and of course, without whom we would have no budget, really. We have Jim Cobb as the other officer, the treasurer. And I kind of feel like we did a little better than Jesus around the whole treasurer thing. So, did Jim make a comment back there? So, we're coming to do the work of the church. And what is the work of the church? And all this, all the money we put together, all the effort around lunch and around, the music, around the preparations, the altar guild does. I mean, you come here faithfully year in, year out to organize this body. For what? And I'm departing now from my rector's report because of the events in Minnesota. I know it has impacted you, and it has impacted me quite a bit. As you know, I have a dear friend there, and I have a trip. This is my vacation after this, is to go visit her. And I'm trying to figure out what to do about that. But the shooting this Saturday happened in her sister's neighborhood. And I have a friend who saw the whole thing, was in the protest. And this is what it's about. why we gather year in, year out, why we put so much effort, money, finance, organization. It's because we need to be the church. We need to be the church in this world when violence seems to have its day, when it will eat up anybody for its purposes. So we gather because we need to practice the way of Jesus. So, this thing that Jesus does when John the Baptist is imprisoned. John was a fiery preacher, and he spoke of Jesus. Oh, look at Jesus. He's going to burn the chaff with unquenchable fire. And I can imagine Jesus hearing this about himself, said, what? When did I say that? Burn the chaff with unquenchable fire? He doesn't say that. John says that. And so he watches what John is doing, and he decides to take another strategy. He's moving away from the Jordan and goes to the Sea of Galilee. And there he's collecting disciples for a way. That's what the early Christians were called. They weren't called Christians. They were called followers of the way. And this way that Jesus is presenting to them will cost them everything. And they won't know it at the beginning. All these people who begin to follow Jesus, they all had their own purposes, right? Judas Iscariot had a very clear purpose. He wanted to see a revolution. He wanted to see the Romans conquered, and by whatever means. And Jesus, he looked like he had some power. He could get behind that. But this way that Jesus will bring them all toward is to expose the problem of violence through accepting it onto his very body so that he could conquer the means of the way we do our relationship with power and oppression. It's so old, from the foundations of the world, that when someone is violent, you respond in the same way. They punch you, you punch harder. And it doesn't save anybody. Instead, Jesus is now cultivating a church, a gathering of people for another way. Imitate me, he says. And there he goes to the cross, and he suffers his death, and on the third day, I will rise. And when I rise, all the ancient literature of the day before Jesus and during Jesus' day, when someone comes back and they rise from the dead, like Odysseus and all those people, you know what they do? They rise, come back, and wreak vengeance on their enemies. Punch even harder. And Jesus, though, when he rose from the dead, what did he do? He pulled the linen from his body. He folded it, rolled it up, put it on the bench where he was buried. And then he said, I must go to those who betrayed me, those who ran away. And what is the first thing he says? Peace be with you. Peace be with you. I have not come back to say, you cowards, now you're going to get it. I spoke of judgment, and here it is. I am going to give you what you deserve. See, this is the thing that's always been so interesting about the Gospels, especially the Gospel of John. Now is the time of judgment, and everyone quakes because we know only the way of violence, which is judgment by getting worse or more of some terrible punishment. But Jesus does say in the Gospel of John, now is the time of judgment. And what does he do? The judgment is peace be with you. My own peace I give to you and leave with you. And this is not like a peace like, like where you have a Mai Tai on the beach, right? This is costly peace. This is peace that will cost you all your impulses for retaliation if you want to follow this way. So this is why we gather here, why you're going to vote on some laws, why you're going to, talk about like vestry and budget, and why we support the music, all to form our hearts, all to form ourselves in the way of Christ, so that when Jesus says, peace be with you, we can accept that. And when we see our enemies, and not just those who are hurt, we believe that peace is still possible. And we declare and announce peace. Peace be with you. It's a long path, my friends. Episcopalians don't believe in being saved in one moment where you come up and you do your thing, right? We believe in formation. We believe in a long, long obedience in the same direction. So, thank you, friends, for listening, for pondering with me this great challenge of what it means to be church today. The world really needs us, really needs the way of Christ. So let us continue to support this community, to celebrate all that we do together so that we can follow Jesus. Amen.